Timeline work comes in many different varieties. Most of these processes utilize the existing timeline to either gather information or to help a change generalize. Richard Bandler's Decision Destroyer is a wonderful example of this. To be effective with these processes, we don't really need to know how the existing timeline is organized. In contrast, this videotape is about the other major kind of timeline work, and that is, how can we change the structure of the timeline itself? When this kind of change is right for someone, it can result in even more pervasive change. On this videotape, you'll observe a demonstration of how can we notice the structure of someone's timeline right now. Then you'll observe two demonstrations of how can we explore changing that structure. This work came out of the understanding or realization, the recognition that some people seem to be more past-oriented. Some people seem to be more present-oriented. Some people seem to be more future-oriented. That there seems to be this difference in where we hold our attention in time. Does that sound familiar? This is sort of a part of common, like ordinary, non-NLP lay thinking, as well as this is one of the categories in the meta-program sorts. Those of you who've had master training, that's familiar to you, where you assess, is somebody more past-oriented, more future-oriented, more present-oriented, and those things make a difference in who we are and where our attention goes, what we want in life, what we're going to be good at, and so on. So, Steve and I started thinking quite a few years ago now, this work started, well, what would it be like if we could take this orientation and not just notice it and utilize it to help us fit people into jobs that are best for them and that kind of thing, but what if we could take this information and find the structure of it and change it if we want to? So if I'm more past-oriented than I want to be, or maybe more future-oriented than I want to be, or only present-oriented, and I think it might be useful for me to have more of a future, what would it be like if it were possible for me to change that? So that's what led to seeking the structure of time, of our time organization, and then changing that structure. And in our experience with it, we were amazed with the results. We thought, oh, this will be kind of fun. We'll just check this out, see if you can do anything here. And what started immediately happening were some pretty basic, pervasive shifts for some people where that was a really relevant piece. I think this has to do, what explains this for me is that many changes in NLP have to do with a particular context, a particular response or behavior. So if I lose my temper sometimes and do a swish pattern or do 6-step reframing, those methods all have to do with taking care of a particular response or behavior. And something like shifting the structure of time, that affects all our experience, because every experience that we have ends up being coded and sorted in terms of time, so that it goes more cross-context. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Okay, we'll move on then. What I'd like to begin with is demonstrating, I'll do a demonstration of eliciting someone's timeline, someone who's curious already about how you organize time, and you don't yet know. You don't yet know? Great. You're on. Great. You get this? And good. If you come here with me. And then, to let you know what we'll do next, after we all have a chance to do this with each other, what we'll do is change them, if we want to. And that's a big if, to be checked. Okay, so Scott, yeah. You have no idea how you organize time yet, right? Wonderful. So what I'd like you to do is think of some trivial event or experience that you've done in the past, you do in the present, you will do in the future. Excuse me, I have to watch my hands. Yes. Tie my hands behind my back. Okay, that you have done in the past, you do in the present, and you will do in the future. And it could be something like waking up in the morning. It could be brushing your teeth, one of those exciting times in life. Driving to work, anything that for you you've done through time. Okay? What event are you picking? Actually, it doesn't really matter.
Making a fire.
Making a fire. Oh, That sounds kind of exciting. My kids would like that. A fire where? Okay, that one likes it too, I can tell. So, what I'd like you to do, Scott, is think of making a fire 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 1 week ago. And you notice as I'm giving him these instructions, I'm pausing just long enough for him to begin to get an access of this, and then moving right along quickly so that hopefully it can be simultaneous without a lot of instruction. Okay. So right now, if you were building a fire, a week in the future, a year in the future, 5 years in the future. Okay? Great. And we can have, we have some sense of how he's doing it already. Don't, some guess he's great. Okay. Do you already? Never mind. Hum? Okay. So Scott, if you now do imagine all of those experiences at once. 5 years in the past, 1 year in the past. You can take a moment to let that come into consciousness. 5 years in the past, 1 year in the past, a week ago, now, a week in the future, a year in the future, 5 years in the future. If you envision those all at once, do you know where they are, where they're located in space?
Does it matter if I was using different woods?
No.
Okay. Do I know where they are?
Yeah, and I'm not talking about Indiana and Ohio and, and geography, but where in your personal space around you do you envision them, the scenes? Do you know what I mean?
Right here.
Okay. Which one is right there?
All of them.
All of them are right there. Okay, and often that's what we think when we first check. Now, we saw differences, though, already, didn't we? So, oh, that's wonderful. What a blessing to work with a group of people who can see these things. Oh, so it's just a matter of assisting someone in bringing this to conscious attention. And as you probably know already, it's often we need to do as much assisting with someone who's had background as someone who hasn't. When it gets to working with our own experience, we're all lay people. We can all use a little input. Okay, so great. It seems like they're all right there for right now. So now what I'd like...
Well, it's only because you asked me to...
Oh, okay. So my question sort of, he thought I wanted it to be all in one location, so he put it there. He's cooperative. That's nice. Yeah, and we can all do that. So if you do it the way you naturally do, Scott, where is each of them? That's a better way to put the question. I stated it poorly before. So where are each of them?
They're in a line, just kind of going like that.
Okay, yeah, that fit?
Yeah.
Perfectly congruent with what he's been demonstrating. Okay, so gesture in space about where they are. So where, 5 years ago, where's that?
It's back there.
Back there? How did we know that? Yeah. Okay, and about how far? Into the wall or clear back there? Or?
That far.
Like right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it's out there a ways.
Okay, beyond the wall or this side?
26 yards.
26 yards, great. and how many inches? He's got it down. Great, 26 yards. And what about 1 year in the past?
It's right there by that jack right there, telephone jack.
Great, great. So 1 year's back there. And 1 week ago, where's that?
It's tailing me. It's almost going to catch up to me.
Okay, almost catching up. And right now, if you're building a fire right now, that's over here. Okay. And 1 week in the future?
It's out, just right out there on the floor.
Great. And 1 year in the future?
It's up by the base of the tripod over there.
Okay, 1 year in the future. Now notice here, now we can start noticing the symmetries and the not symmetries between the past and future. So 1 year in the future is quite a bit farther distant than 1 year in the past, isn't it? Which is just interesting. And just so that those of you who haven't had background in this are real clear on this, there is no right and no wrong timeline. There is no timeline that the integrated person has. So let's all just take it on. Timelines are a really fascinating way that each of us are unique. And I wouldn't want it to be any other way. If we would all have exactly the same timelines, we would be not exactly the same person, but there would be a little too much uniformity. There wouldn't be room for the kind of variety that we want to have. So just to be real clear on that. There are advantages and disadvantages and natural consequences to how we have time sorted. And it's always a question of, do I like it this way? Is this the way that for me it works out? And so when I get someone's timeline, I have no idea if it's what they want or not until I start talking with them and asking them more about it. So, okay, great. So Scott, you've got 1 year out there, and where's 5 years?
It's by the trash can, way out there by the wall. Well, I can't see any farther than the wall, so I can't put it any farther out.
Oh, okay. All right. So right there at the wall. Oh, that's interesting. So that you wouldn't put it farther out than you could see?
I can't.
Why not?
Because I can't see beyond it.
Oh, okay. So what is beyond that then that you can't see?
I don't know.
I'm just curious. All right. What about 10 years in the future?
It's basically the same spot.
Same spot. 20 years?
The same spot.
So all of those get right there. Now that's interesting, isn't it?
But what if the wall wasn't there?
What if the wall...
I'm not used to having walls around me. I spend most of my time in the woods.
Make it a forest.
Okay. So let's pretend like there's no wall there.
Okay. Okay.
Then what happens with the future?
We can just keep going as far as I can see.
Okay, great, great. Good question. Yeah, and here was the difference between, was it the wall or is it that physically my eyes don't see farther than that, and so therefore I'm not going to... Nice, okay. Now, so you can do that, and notice you just did that even in a room with walls.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to be sure that's clear. Okay. So one slight timeline change already, all right? So that when he's in a room with walls, he can go ahead and utilize his regular timeline that probably works best for him at this moment. Okay. Now, check the past and the future. The first thing we do is sort the location out, and that's the most obvious difference. Once we've got that, what we can do, and you can do this now, Scott, is just allow the rest of your past, future and past to fill in or have the sense that that's happening. So we've been using these events to just mark certain areas of the time, pathway, line, tunnel, whatever you want to think of it as. And now you can just have the sense that the rest of it's there too.
Okay.
Okay? And for the rest of you, this is not something you have to consciously see. You can just let it be there. And then whatever happens when we do that, that works. Okay, now, when you compare the past to the future, Scott, what differences do you notice? In terms of things like, are they colored differently? Is one brighter or one dimmer or darker? Is one clearer and one fuzzier? One
yeah,
bigger?
the past is a lot darker.
Okay.
It's just, the shades are quite a bit more subdued, and the future is very bright. It's very bright, and it's like having a camera on a different f-stop.
Okay, great. Like having a camera on a different f-stop. Now, as I get this information, what makes it easiest for me to track it is that I just start putting it on me. And then I can track it, and I know what I know, and I know what I still need to ask about real automatically without having to check my notes all that carefully. Okay, so I've got this darker past, brighter future. That's great. And now, any difference in terms of size?
Yeah, the past is kind of shrunk down and small and fat, and the future is pretty expansive. And as the time, as I go farther out on the line, things tend to get bigger, and I can see them better.
Ah, nice, nice. Oh, this is a nice one. Okay, so things get a little bigger, and as you go farther into the future, do they get brighter also? Is the brightness the same all the way?
The brightness is about the same.
Okay, so brightness stays the same, but it gets larger so that he can see them better. Now, notice what that does for him. Since he's got the future in a straight line in front of him, if the future, long-range future wasn't bigger, what would happen? He couldn't see it, exactly. Then it would be blocked by the immediate future, and he would probably not be very responsive to the long-range future. This way, he can see the long-range future, so my guess is that he is someone, my guess is that you're someone, Scott, who has long-range goals and you move towards them. Is that?
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah, that would fit. That fits. Now, let's check for any other differences. Is one, in terms of how high or low they are, is one of them higher or lower, or are they both the same?
The past is on the same level as my feet are. It just kind of goes back and it gets smaller. And the future, as time goes on, the things get bigger and they also move up.
And how many of you already saw that with his gestures? Usually I wouldn't even ask that question, but I could see there was a difference there in where he's gesturing. Now check, Scott, notice if there are any kinks, any discontinuities.
Yeah, there's some spots I didn't get fires that kind of bother me. cold nights, you know.
I've never dealt with this issue before. I don't missing fires, yes, in the past. Okay, well, we might want to do something about that later on. Now, does that, so there are some spots where you kind of notice, no fires.
Blank spots.
Blank spots. Now, what you might do is notice, do you have the sense that there were some other experiences there, even if you're not clear just what they were? See, I asked specific
experiences.
Okay, so you can let all those fill in as they just naturally have been. Okay, notice though if there are any, like some people have hills or valleys or all of a sudden there's a little quirk somewhere. Check for anything like that. We have not seen that in his gestures. I haven't, but I want to be real thorough in checking for this.
There are some blank spots right out there just before a year.
Some blank spots. Okay, now that's important to know that. If there are blank spots, or if there's any discontinuity. Sometimes, all of a sudden, there will be a gap somewhere in the past or the future, or the present.
But it doesn't bother me.
Okay, you're comfortable with that. Okay, that's the key thing. It's not that we have to have it might be a blessing. You might go, oh good, there's an empty space there. And that, if it were filled, he might feel overwhelmed. So it's important not to have preconceived notions about what this means and if it's good or bad.
I feel like a guinea pig. Okay.
You are, but I am one too. Next, they all get to be one. And it's kind of that way with NLP. I think of being in this field, we're all guinea pigs. I kind of like being one. So.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, great.
Squeal.
Yeah, you just squeal. I just squeal a lot. I utilize myself first as a guinea pig for almost everything that I do to kind of test things out on myself and just get a sense, a feel for them. Find out, are there any gaps? Okay. Is there anything else you notice about how you've got time coded that you think is interesting? I haven't asked you specifically, is the past or the future clearer or fuzzier?
There's more people in the future pictures. The farther down the road I go, the more people there are in the pictures.
Interesting. And what's your response to that?
It's congruent with
the direction
my long-range goals. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Could I ask?
Do any of you have a question you want to ask? Go ahead.
What's the difference in chunk size?
What do you mean by that?
Well, is it more specific in one area or more general? Is there kinesthetic linked with one or the other or both?
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm trying
Now,
to get
when
at?
you ask each other these kind of questions, I really encourage you to use language that you would use if somebody didn't know any NLP at all, even though you do. Because if somebody tells me, what's the difference in chunk size, that could mean a lot of different things. And I could answer it, and Sammy could think she knows what I mean, and it might be totally different.
The difference between general scenes or general feelings versus specific events and things
Okay,
of this
great.
sort
So let's
between-
check for that. Can you?
I don't have a lot of strong feelings associated with the past, except that it's there, and I get excited about the future, and most of my emotions are tied up in the pictures that are closest to me on the timeline.
Okay. Which makes sense with this orientation, doesn't it? Okay, great. Now, this is the timeline elicitation piece, and this is basically what I want you to do when you do this with each other. You will ask questions until you can take on the timeline and do yours that way. So you know enough about it that you can take it on. So I know enough about Scott's now that I can do that with mine. I can put my past into something similar, at least, to the way Scott does his, and I can put my future like that. And here I am in the present, right there in between that. So I have my questions answered. If when I take it on, I go, I'm confused about something and I'm not sure how to see something, then I know I need to ask some more questions. Make sense? Okay, thanks a lot, Scott.
Okay.
This didn't take very long, did it? I mean, basically, it's real quick. Do this in groups. Do it in threes. So if Jack and Sammy and I are in one group, the first thing that we're going to do to make this kind of go quickly is we're going to get a sense of our timeline ourselves. The three of us will. And I'll kind of go, oh, yeah, I think mine is here and here. Or I'll notice that I haven't a clue. However much I notice on my own is what I notice. Then, as soon as we've each taken the time to turn inward and check on that, then we start helping each other. So I say to Sammy, think of 5 years in the past, 1 year in the past, 1 week, the present, 1 week in the future, 1 year, 5 years. A trivial experience is what you'll take through all of this. The reason that I'm picking that is that the big events like getting married, you probably didn't do that many times for most of us. You know? And you may not, things like having children, probably don't want to put that many examples into the future. At least that would have ecology problems for me. So trivial things we know go through past, present, and future, and they're an easy way to do this. Sometimes people will say, but the way I know the difference is because I was doing it in a different house, you know, or I can tell because I looked younger. And what you want to do is get them to go, to forget about those content differences and notice difference in location. Okay. Yes, you're in a different house, but what about where you see these images? Do you have any questions about that first piece? You'll have the person do it simultaneously. You guys were already really watching the gestures and eye movements really well. That's nice. That will help, of course. Because when someone does say, well, I don't have any idea, you know, that the past is the same as the present for me. There's no difference. And it's the same as the future, too. So I don't know what you're talking about. I've had people do this. Well-trained people. So it's, you know, again, when we turn into our own experience, I think it's good not to have any shoulds or oughts, that we should notice all these things. So start by noticing location. Where do you see these things? Can't help but give away mine, right? You all will know mine real well. By the way, when you elicit these from other people, you can be most certain that you have their timeline if it is distinctly different from yours. If you get from another person the same timeline as yours, be suspicious. You may have just done an installation. That is different than elicitation. So the more I was doing a very bad job at first of keeping my gestures to myself for how I do my timeline. But Scott had his own anyway. He definitely had his. And as long as I'm responsive to that, generally people will. They'll keep their own. Okay. Now, after you've got location, check for other submodality differences, especially for kinks, dislocations, gaps, that kind of thing. Or notice which parts are more visible, which parts are less visible, that kind of thing. Any questions so far? Yeah, Judy.
On the elicitation, when you, in the beginning you get them all, and then you say, imagine all of these simultaneously. I wonder how it would work if you asked, imagine all of these one after another. Because when you say simultaneously, I want to have them all be in the same place.
Oh, if I go at the same time, is that better? Okay.
Well, no, I mean, I want to say one after another.
Okay. For Judy, I would say, I'd say one after another. For some people, there would be a problem, and the problem is this. When we used to just have people do it one after another, a certain group of people would see them all in the same spot because they were doing it one after the other. Simultaneously requires the sorting, the spatial sorting. So that's the reason for that.
When I hear simultaneously, then I put them all in the same place.
Which is interesting.
So
So as long as we know what we're going for, we can adapt our language to make it work for the person we're talking with. What I go for is what kind of words are as neutral as possible for the most people to get the basic layout of the time pathway, tunnel, or line. Yes, that's the goal. Once you've got the basic layout, then you can say, okay, get a sense of everything else filling in, and then you can get color, size, all that kind of stuff more easily. Now, once you've got that, and I think that'll go pretty quickly, maybe about 5 minutes each, then you trade timelines. And when you do this, remember what yours was. As you take them on, be prepared when you are done to put yours back on really carefully. After we put these books out, even though we have these kind of stipulations in the book, it says that. Someone called me up and said, you know, that timeline work that you have in your books is really powerful. And I said, yeah, tell me about your experience with it. And she said, well, I was getting together with some other people, and we were just experimenting with it a little bit, and we were taking on each other's timelines. And I know you said put your own back, but I didn't really think about it, and it didn't occur to me, and I just walked out, and I was acting really strange. She started talking about, I don't remember the content anymore, but she thought she was going nuts. She was really losing it. And then she remembered that she hadn't put her timeline back. Soon as she remembered that, it's so simple to do. You know, oh, just put it back the way it was. Then she was her regular self again. So these changes do make a powerful difference, and it's important to keep that in mind in even the beginning of exploring, like we're going to be doing here. So that if you take on somebody else's and you start feeling like that's not right, something's not right here, honor that. And make sure that you have a way of doing it that for you feels okay, feels ecological. And usually the frame that makes that possible is just knowing, and knowing it through all levels of yourself, that you're just playing. This is an experiment. You're trying this on and you're going to put yours back later. So for me, I have no difficult, it's not a problem for me to take on anybody's timeline, no matter how unusual or strange it seems to me. And even if it results in certain limitations, it's not a problem for me because I know it's temporary. I know this is a split-second thing that I'm doing to gather information, and that I'll put mine back. So does that fit for you? Okay, and be sensitive to that with each other in your groups. So as you put someone else's on, and you get it the way they have it, then try out just noticing, oh, okay, who am I with this timeline? How am I different? How are my responses different? Take it through a different context in your life, and how does it make a difference here and here? And get a feel for that. What would you gain? What would you lose if this were your timeline? And then keep in mind also that the way it works for you is going to be different than the way it works for them. It may be the same, but it may be different. So if when I put on this Scott's timeline, I lose resources from the past, see, my guess is that's not true for Scott. But certainly I would just ask him. I'd go, oh, when I put this on, I lose resources from the past. How does that work for you? And then he would tell me how it works for him. This would give him the opportunity to check, is there this for me or not? But very important for me to honor how it really does work for him, not how it works for me. Okay? Any questions so far? We'll try these on. Then you are done with this phase. Please do stop right there. Do I have your pledge that you will do that? I would like to do a little more discussion and demonstration before we go into the change portion. Okay? You may, though, already begin to get inklings of how and what you would like to be different on your own timeline. Just wait a little bit to actually do it. So, what fascinated you? Jack was noticing. He was commenting to me, and Jack's a Feldenkrais practitioner, so of course he would be extra sensitive to this. He's telling me, I have to completely change my posture to put on this other timeline. And some of the rest of you notice that? Your posture shifted? Other things shifted too, probably. And it's wonderful when you get that kind of information, because that's real interesting. And some of the rest of you, I think, got some real interesting information too. And particularly if you can find something about your timeline arrangement where you can go, I'm not sure that works as well as it could. That's a real blessing and a gift. Because as soon as you tap into anything like that, you immediately know, oh, well, this is exactly the kind of information that I can shift with what we're doing now. So it means that you just found a possibility for more for yourself. And so that's what I would begin thinking, you know. There is always a useful purpose for our organizing time the way we have, however. So before we get into making any shifts, it's important to keep that in mind and be sensitive to that as we begin to shift to alternative arrangements. Did any of you have a sense as you took on someone else's timeline that, ooh, this would not work for me is that familiar? Definitely I don't want to stick with this one, right? And that has to do with all of the benefits that you already get from your own that you sensed, whether consciously or just with a kinesthetic signal of, no, that this would not be right for me, I'd lose something. So it's real important that even in something where, okay, there's a box of photographs dumped out, there's something gained in that arrangement. And it's important to preserve all the gains as you make the shifts. Okay, yeah, you've got a question?
I couldn't even get myself to try on the time.
Oh, what stopped you?
I just felt myself moving towards it.
And pulling back? Okay. You might find out if this frame works for you. For most people, if they pull back, it's kind of like a concern that I might get sucked in and not get back again or something. Is that familiar or not? Is it something else?
I didn't want to leave the security in my own.
Okay. So it's a matter, I think, of having a clear outcome for doing it, knowing what you're doing it for, having a clear purpose. Because I don't want to leave the security of mine either. And yet, if I have a purpose for taking on someone else's and I know it's temporary, then it's worth doing. It's not worth doing for the next weekend, you know, but it is worth doing for a minute or two or even 5 to really get a sense of what's someone else's world like. That's phenomenally enriching, just in and of itself. You know, the exercises where you take self position, other position, observer, or first, second, and third, depending upon what language you got. When you have this kind of knowledge about someone, you can do that so much more fully, take on their world, when you understand something so basic as their time sorting. And that's very enriching, I find. Does that give you a sense of a purpose that would make it worth doing? Okay, yeah, try it out and notice what happens. And it also, for me, has given me a sense of, well, who knows where I might find something that I actually want to add to mine or change in mine. Because sometimes something that I might not have a clue as to what it does from the outside, if I step in and go, oh, that's what it's like, I might decide I want part of that. And then I can take it on. So the first time you do it, what I'd suggest is that you do it very quickly, do the back and forth very quickly, that you step in for literally a fraction of a second and step back out into the security of your own, just to know, and to know on all levels, that you can do that. You can get back to your own really easily. Then stay maybe 2 seconds and go back, you know. And then once that back and forth is real smooth and real solid, I think then it'll be easier. Okay. Yeah?
In your experience, people who've got time in front of them and behind them, how are they aware of what's behind them?
Now that's different. The question is how, with people who have the timeline kind of like Scott, back to front, how are they aware of what's behind it? Scott talked about his experience where it's kind of, he could sort of see it but not as clearly as if he'd turn around and look. That's typical. Another person in one of the groups here, I forget who right now, was saying that, well, they're back there, and if I want to know about it, I pull it out and put it on right here. So he takes one example at a time. Was that you?
Well, I don't know if it was, but that's what I did.
Oh, okay.
I got all the tasks behind me, and I pull it into a sort of a workspace in front of me.
Ah.
And what I've been finding now is I have the future sort of out in front of me, and I can see that. But if I want to work
Now notice where his future starts. He says, I pull the past into a workspace in front of me, and the future is sort of, so the future starts here, not here.
No, this is the workspace, because when I
This
want
is-
to look
yeah.
at an image from the future, I go and grab that and bring that in here as well.
Oh, interesting. This is like the big screen that we mess around with.
Process.
Fascinating, fascinating. Isn't it amazing what we humans think of? Without even knowing it, just some inner organization just happens spontaneously.
But I'm not very aware of what's back there.
Yeah.
Wondering-
And
I
that,
don't
of
know
course,
how I code it. But obviously there is some way of knowing
and
that.
what you might do, Peter, is actually stand in a certain place, get it all set up, and step off and take a look from the outside and find out if that helps you see it more clearly. To literally do it in space like that. How many of you had your timeline in front of you and you were not connected with it physically? Okay, great, so a bunch of you. And how many of you had your timeline connected with your body in some way? Okay, so a few more. So we've got both arrangements. Does anyone who's got their timeline off of them want to explore what would happen if they, great, you come on up.
And so it's all in front of me,
Uh-huh.
and I can see any part of it.
Uh-huh,
And my
okay.
future's bigger than my past. So present is kind of off screen.
Wonderful.
basically.
Now there's something else different here about the way Eric's doing it is he scoots around to go. And then 5 years ago is over here, and over here is...
I'm very
Yeah.
kinesthetic.
All right. And so that makes a difference too in how we can access and so on. If we scoot around or do we move the timeline, he kind of scoots around rather than just shift the timeline around to his workspace the way you do more. Now,
But
what,
he also mentioned something that I'd like him to address in this whole process. He said his present is off-center, and I assume that where you're standing is center. Okay, so
yes,
I'm
yeah.
interested
Yes,
to
that's
find
good.
more about
That's
that.
good that you
as,
noticed that. And
not
it's
in the present.
no, well, it's for one thing off of him. It's in front. So now, tell us about what you experience as the advantage of the way you've got it now.
Well, I can observe it all.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a game, and I can play with it.
Uh-huh.
It
yeah,
feels
clearly.
really fun. Playing with time is fun.
Uh-huh. Great, great. And we can, that's real congruent. Now, any disadvantages? Do you have any?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll just experiment with him, with having the timeline be a part of him and find out if it creates even more advantages or not. You know, if not, we'll leave it how it is. If he likes, for some reason, having it the other way, we'll add that to enrich it as an option. And a frame that I use around experimenting with timelines is that you don't necessarily have to take a new one on permanently forever in all situations. That ideally, we can become more and more flexible and have more and more choice rather than have a new rut to be in. Some ruts are more fun and cleaner and wider and nicer than others, and yet to have flexibility and choice, I think is ideal. Okay, so it might be that he likes this new one for certain things and not for other things. Okay, so we've got this timeline pathway. Now we noticed that it was down low too.
Yeah, I want to anchor it to something. I want to anchor it to physical things in the room, and that helps me to experience it more completely.
Okay. All right. Now, what happens if you let it stay down low and also rise up? So it kind of expands. What happens if you do that?
That's great.
Okay. Does it make any changes? Does anything change? Now it's sort of playtime when you do that. You go, well, let's see. If you do this, is that useful or interesting or different?
I almost feel like I'm distracted. And if I'm looking here, I'm less distracted. Whereas if I'm putting it up in space, it's almost like all these things are going to distract me.
So this fits also with having it off his body.
Yes.
That this is a way that works for him. It's, notice that if it were on his body, it also wouldn't be in front of him, even if it was larger. So we'll do the other thing first and then see if it...
Okay.
What I'd like you to do is probably you'll want to move on to your timeline. If you
Into
want
the present
to,
or the future?
I'd say the present. Just
Okay. I'm in it.
It's just, all right. All right. Now you're in it. Now, and you've got this line pathway, what do you call it? Configuration? Shall we stick with that?
A line or pathway's fine.
Okay, anything.
It's a line for me.
He's flexible. How is it different being on it?
I almost feel confined. It's like I only have this, and
you don't have.
I would need to real consciously say, okay, now I'm looking at my past. But if I'm doing this, then I can't see this.
And yeah.
Now I can see this, but where's this? I feel like I've lost resources.
Okay.
Whereas stepping off, I've got all my resources.
You got all your resources. Now,
so I don't like being on it.
Here, by the way, we're starting with one where Eric has no sense of a limitation with his current timeline. When you've got that, then you know there's a solution that's going to work better. When the person is starting with, hey, things are great, you know, I like how it's organized, then it's just a matter of, well, is there anything else that would be fun too? So let's play a little more if you want. Try several changes almost at once and find out if this makes a difference. Now I'm going to have Eric try something that's a little more like a whole category of people finds this one useful. So I know it's useful to a lot of people, something like this. And what each of us ends up with is something unique, though. It ends up changing from what I instruct them. So let yourself step on to the timeline. And this time, I'd like you to have a sense that the timeline temporarily connects to you, so that when you move back and around, the timeline moves with you. Just for now.
So I can be anywhere in the room. And
Yeah,
it's with
and it's with you.
Okay.
Okay. And now, simultaneously, let it. Yeah, it's there.
There goes my
now,
timeline.
see, when it's off to the side, though, he can't see it because it was in a straight line. So he doesn't have much access. Now, most of you with left to right ones that attach to your body, was it straight out? No. No, because you lose a lot. So let the future sort of swing around to whatever feels like, I mean, he's got it right there. We know, and we see an angle, right? There's a certain angle. Okay, now you might also let the size change as seems right to you. With this, so that it's not necessarily on the floor, it might be. Okay, and now let the past swing around to wherever it might find its home.
Can move that.
Okay, all right, now he's better expression now. He's got access to more of his resources. And my sense is that Eric's got a lot of resources that are positive in his past to connect with, and so that's a vital part of any arrangement. Okay, now what's this like? Tell me about this.
Well, it feels similar to the old one in that I can see past and I can see future. And I feel like I have my resources accessible.
Now, what is different between this one and the old one?
If I'm in it, I still feel in it, and the other one, I feel like I can dance through time. And it has a real playful character
Yes, we can see that that's still missing for him, isn't it?
I feel stuck here. I feel limited, and I want to play.
You want to play, okay. And so we'll find out if there's any advantage. What I'd like you to do now is stepping back in to this new one.
I'm in it.
Okay. He made a slight step back, and I think, okay. So now, invite your unconscious to notice if and where is a context where this actually allows me to play more in a different way than I've played before.
The thought that I'm having is I could be possibly more associated with the present, be more present in some situations, as opposed to I tend to be able to dissociate real well and to be an observer.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that fits with my sense, too, of what happens if I step on and off my timeline. Eric has an unusually resourceful observer position, which makes it much more fun and pleasant than what I've seen for most people when they step off their timeline. A lot of people go, it's like no feeling anymore. And for many people, when I've seen them step onto their timeline, I see a radical shift in color, where they gain color, gain movement, and they're now in their own life. That's different than Eric's, because he's got a real resourceful observer position. So I want to be sure to respect that and honor it. And find out if there's a way in which being present in this kind of way where you are attached to your timeline can be useful and valuable too.
It's almost like if I step out of this,
where are your
I can be in
resources?
playfulness.
So what happens if you take the playfulness back in?
Oh, okay.
Okay. And that's what I need to do because I feel like I have no playfulness there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that's important to
and
me.
especially when you're in your own life, you want to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a high criteria.
Yeah. So what happens when you step back, feel the playfulness, and then step in having even more of it?
Okay, boy, okay, I feel like I'm going to need to help myself take that resource with me because I wasn't before.
Yeah, yeah. So doing it
So I can
this
step
way now.
into this with playfulness.
Yeah, with even more. You might be.
Good.
Yeah. Now, do this in a playful sort of way, though.
Right.
And you might bounce back and forth a little bit.
Okay.
You know, in and
Okay.
out, and notice how it gets more playful each time. That looks much better. That looks much better. Now, of course, you may wonder how much more playful it is the second time than the first.
Right.
And I have no idea how playful the fifth time might be.
Wow. Okay.
That's two.
This feels much more playful.
Oh, really? Really, really. Looks that way, too.
Yes.
All right.
I don't even mind staying here that much.
No, not yet. No, you have to do it again so it gets even more playful.
Even more playful. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, this feels good. I feel like I can be alive. My body gets
good.
involved.
It's a good idea to be able to be alive on your timeline. I hadn't mentioned this before, but write that down.
It felt dead at the beginning. This is like,
Yeah, and we could see that, couldn't we? So
it's
yeah.
it really feels, and the playfulness is definitely building.
Yes.
But there's
Is there even more resources in this position you want to move into that one?
It's almost like I'm really trusting of this, and real trusting of me and my resources, and I feel completely comfortable here. And in here, so there's more playfulness, and there it seems like I don't have as much trust.
Yeah, which certainly
this.
makes sense because how many seconds has it been now that he's experimented with this new one?
Only a couple seconds of the new playfulness.
Right, right. So what you might want to experiment with right now, is stepping forward into that one.
Okay.
Letting yourself, and you might want to do this with your eyes closed.
Okay.
Let yourself go into the future with it, this way, noticing how it is. Noticing how it becomes even more resourceful as you move along through time, with even more playfulness in it. And in particular, notice everything that's interesting and useful and playful and the benefits. Also notice, consciously and unconsciously, any additional adjustments you may find yourself beginning to make, almost automatically, to make this fit for who you are and with your values and your criteria so that it fulfills them, or makes little shifts so that it fulfills them better. And you may notice that in certain contexts, the old arrangement, the other arrangement, is automatically there, and that's just better in those situations, and then it automatically shifts to this one in certain other situations, especially those situations where you know they're just pleasurable and just fun for you. So, yeah.
What I became aware of is, I think this is it touches on a real trust issue. And when I'm around people where I don't feel completely trusting and therefore relaxed and I can just be me and play, there's part of me that's always in the observer position. And it feels like that's important for my safety.
Yeah, okay. So he's identified certain situations where he wants to have that other one. And then, did you find some situations where this new one feels
when I'm
more
completely trusting and completely relaxed, it feels great to
be in that.
To be in it and almost not noticing myself, losing myself and just being carefree and playful.
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to have the flexibility to have that experience too, to just be immersed. Okay, All right. Well, I think is that enough play around to give you a little sense of what's possible? Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. It was playful.
That was. Yeah, and that was, when we start with somebody who goes, you know, I really don't like mine, we have extra motivation for change too, that tends to propel shifting the timeline more immediately. Now, sometimes though, making the shifts involve enough ecology considerations that you can go through a number of objections before it will really work. We've got some examples in Heart of the Mind of that kind of thing, where sometimes for people to see their past, for example, certain traumas need to be worked through. Sometimes the past is behind us for good reason, you know, or sometimes we've dumped it into a hole somewhere in an abyss, you know, for good reason. Some part of us goes, don't look at that, pain, you know, and you don't want that. So to get access to the resources of the past in that kind of situation requires first doing some other kinds of trauma work. Make sense? Okay. Any other questions or comments from, oh, first, do you have a sense now of the answer to your question, the difference that it makes to step on your timeline versus being off? Okay, good. In general, it means, you know, when I'm on and it's connected to me, generally I have more kinesthetic access and more associated, which has certain advantages and certain disadvantages. If I were doing a regular session, I probably wouldn't have done this because it didn't come out of his specific goal. So I want to make that real clear too. I would have started only when someone was going, I really want a different result with my timeline. But we're playing here, you know, so we're going even when we don't have a particular goal, just exploring. Okay, now, Judy.
Are there any other generalities in terms of changing people's timelines? Like one you said was having them be on their timeline. Are there other
I liked for people to have that choice. And not to always do it necessarily, but for most people it's an advantage to at least have that choice. Another thing to check for is, does their future go, if it's side to side, does it go to the same direction that their visual construct is? Or not? That's another thing to check for. Well, think, what's it like for you? If you take your future and put it where you do visual memory images, future is going to be more fixed. It's going to seem less changeable. If past is over in visual construct, it will seem really changeable. You can do change history really easily with those people. Oh, sure, piece of cake. It may not make a difference in the future because that's fixed, but you can get it to change really easily. So it can also, there are a number of examples that I have where it went along with learning disabilities. It's not an arrangement that usually works for people well. I have one counterexample to this only. There's one person who had his reversed, and out of quite a few that I've found, and he very resourceful person, very capable, lot of access to a lot of resources. And I had him experiment with turning it around just to see what that would be like. And he came up with some advantages, but it wasn't a dramatic shift like it is for most people. Does anyone else have a timeline that you know you'd really like to have different? We've got a couple. Would you like to see one more demonstration of something like that? Okay. Yes, what's yours?
My past is a roller coaster.
Oh!
We got to ride it.
that was this one.
It's not fun. It has a lot of dips and ups and downs.
So her past is a roller coaster. Did you all hear that? They were ups and downs. Okay. Now I'm just curious, what happens if you just allow it to be straight?
Oh, it just goes way back there.
This goes way back there. How is your experience different when you do it that way?
That's a lot calmer.
Okay. Now notice how fast that is?
Quick.
Yeah, okay. Good. So she goes now, yeah, oh, that's a lot calmer. You saw the state shift? Okay, good. Anything else?
My future veers off to the left.
Okay, so your future veers off to your left? Okay, do you know her accessing cues?
I think I'm normally organized.
Future veers off. Come on up here. We'll play with this a little bit more. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. So notice what it's like now, having it straight behind you.
Yes.
Okay. And it feels more calm?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Phew, good. Good. Now notice anything else that's different while it's back there. And why am I asking her all these questions? Do I want to know the answer? No. Not I mean, yes, but not really. That's not really why I'm asking. I'm asking to solidify, to further install, to make that more and more real and complete and natural and the way it's like it's always been that way.
Okay. It's fairly dark back there.
Okay, so it's fairly dark back there. Now, what happens if you turn a little more light on it? Or just let the light that's in there but you hadn't noticed shine out a little bit more.
Okay. Oh, a few different colors come up.
Okay.
I keep wanting to go back there and look.
We noticed. Yes. These subtle cues. Okay. Good, good. So there's more, and does that change your experience of it? Noticing the light a little more?
Yes. There's some things that I like and some things that I don't. Some colors are nicer than others.
Yeah, okay. And overall, does that seem enriched to you? Better that way or better dark?
Yeah.
Better this way,
Yeah.
right? Okay, good. So we allow it to be this way.
Okay.
And you can let it be there for the moment.
Okay.
And now, given the way she keeps turning back around, we might want to shift it to find out what it's like left to right. But we'll leave it there for now. Okay, so you've got your timeline over here, your future, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
What does that look like?
It stretches out, sort of like a train. It is
Okay,
kind of
stretches
moving.
out like a train. And so it's kind of front, and then it veers to the left?
And then it kind of curves around a bend over here.
Okay, when does it go around the bend? How far in the future?
Going towards 4 and 5 years, it kind of just bends around.
Okay, now, is that something you want to be different?
Yeah, I don't know what I want, but I want something different.
Okay, why do you want something different?
I can't see what's around the corner.
Okay.
And also, I think I'd like it my future a little closer in. It seems like it's just dreadfully far out
and unattainable that way.
Yes.
When things become too far out, it seems like you can't reach them, and she's
Yes.
sort of leaning forward to grasp. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing you can do, allow it to come in a little more, and just notice what that's like for you.
Okay, it gets a little straighter.
Okay, it's already a little straighter.
Uh-huh.
Does it still go around a bend?
Yeah, slightly at the end there, yes.
So how many years out now?
About 2.
2 years. Oh, okay. So, all right. So she can't see around the corner.
Even closer? I'd like.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Bring it in closer until it's about where you feel that it fits. The amazing thing about this is usually all we have to do is do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's go, oh, let me try it this way. Oh yeah, that's better. And when it fits for us better, it just stays. Because our whole being goes, oh, this is better. This works better.
As she does this, her posture is changing drastically.
Oh, interesting, yes. Yeah. So Jack's commenting for you in the back that when she's doing this, her posture is changing real dramatically. Yeah.
Okay.
Much more balanced.
Yeah, I like it in closer.
Great. Is it where you like it now, or do you want it even closer?
No, this is fine.
Okay, good. Now, is there still a bend?
No, there's no bend.
No bend, okay. Gee, I didn't get to do any more than that. I didn't feel like I got to do very much.
Oh, make it brighter and then.
Okay, all right, yes. Okay, let's do that.
I mean, as long as we're doing it. She had sparkles. I thought that was neat.
All right, add it. Add it in sparkles and light. Sparkles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That's
now,
better.
I'm going to check on something else here. Earlier, Jan shared with us that her future timeline veered off to her left, which is where most people have their past timeline along with their visual memory. Most people's future timeline is on their right because this is where they have their visual construct. Next, I asked Jan some questions to find out if her IQs are normally organized or if they're reversed. This will let me know if it will be a good idea to explore having Jan shift her future timeline over to her right, or if it's better to have her leave it the way it is. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions to get your
Okay.
So, what does your car look like?
My real car in life?
Yes, your real car in life.
It's
What
white.
color is it?
It's white.
Okay. How many doors does it have?
It has 4 doors.
Okay. If you were to make it a green cart with blue spots and red wheels, what would that look like?
Great. Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, what does, let's see, you have a friend? Close
Yes.
friend?
Yes.
Okay. What color hair do they have?
Blonde.
Okay. Now, if that best friend had purple hair with green stripes,
Mm-hmm.
what would that be like?
Interesting.
It would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
What would a giraffe look like with 2 heads and 4 tails?
Okay. Interesting. Really. Wow.
Okay. Now, you know what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
So far, what I'm observing, some of you can see better than others, I think, is on the she's going up left for both.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So we don't have I don't have a conclusion yet. So I'm continuing to ask a few more. Now, recite the Pledge of Allegiance to yourself. Okay. Now, what is the feeling of petting a cat? She accesses more just on the left period, doesn't she? Which is interesting.
See on one side.
Yes. But when we were doing it before, and I was on the train, and the right side was black.
When you're on
Right.
the
When we were doing my
interesting.
future.
Okay. Here's what yes, go ahead.
Do your eyes focus normally, and do you wear glasses, or do you have any?
I don't wear glasses, and I've had really good vision, except recently because I'm over 40. You know. I
What
had
a
to put it out
line!
there.
Everybody said that.
Do you have good depth perception and both eyes work and everything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good choice. Good
So
choice.
far.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I
okay.
saw something.
Okay, so
Okay.
a couple more questions. Let's see. What does your front door look like?
Okay.
Now, what did you do inside to answer that?
I saw my original front door when I was a little kid,
Uh-huh.
and then I went, no, I don't live there, and then I
Uh-huh.
went to the present,
Okay. All right. And then what did you see in the present?
my door.
Okay. When you saw your door in the present, what perspective did you see it from? How did you see it?
I'm outside looking at the door as we're walking up to it.
Okay. When you saw the door from your childhood,
I was outside, same.
looking up to it. Okay. Interesting. Now we're getting the right cues. It's not all falling into place yet. So we'll keep going.
Good.
A little bit more. Something else that I do sometimes, if I don't get clarity on how someone's organized, I will have them experiment with their timeline in different places and just find out where it ends up feeling the best. One of the things that I think happens that makes it difficult to detect sometimes what's neurologically the best fit for each of us is that sometimes we use one type of processing and don't use another kind, period. And sometimes we just pretty much use memory and don't use construct, and sometimes we use construct for everything and not memory. And there are people who do both. I am right now guessing that she is more normally organized. That's my guess. But I'm ready to change that guess at any moment if I get new.
I think I use
data.
memory more. I think you're right.
I think so too.
I mean,
Yeah. And just looking at her this is where knowing all of the physiological cues also comes in handy, because overall, that's what she looks like more. Okay, so now, let's play.
Okay.
Want to play a little bit more?
Yes, yes.
Because now she's got this timeline that's backed through the front. And another thing that I'm going to invite you guys to play with, especially since she started with one curve to the side, I want her to have the choice between both of these arrangements, if that's something that she wants. So we want her to end up having one like this too, if she wants it.
okay. That would be a stretch. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So let's find out if this fits for you. And those of you who've noticed that you've got one like this and you like it, experiment with trying one like this and find out if it adds choice. Or vice versa. If you've got one like this and you like it and you go, I can't find anything to change here, try adding this. And because both are valuable in different contexts. Okay. So, Jan, what I'd like you to do is first allow the future. We're going to let it just float around over to the side over here. And you can notice what it's like. So it'll just, and you can notice where it wants to go.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, right here.
And what angle it wants to be at. Strange way to talk, isn't it? But yet, it's meaningful to our unconscious. And it allows to talk in a way that kind of allows our unconscious to go, oh, this is right, or that's right, or that, or that, or...
Okay, I like it kind of level, just moving up just a little.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Now, does that feel comfortable to you, having that there, that future there? Just get a sense.
It's so strange.
Yeah. We're not asking if it's familiar. Notice I didn't use that word. Yeah, real strange.
Okay.
And her response.
Yeah.
Her response is a real demonstration, too, of how meaningful these things are that seem arbitrary in a way, but yet, ooh, that's definitely different than that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it comfortable in the sense that, yeah, I think this fits. It makes some sense.
I have to keep bringing it in a little closer.
Good.
Okay.
Do that.
And add the sparkles.
And add the sparkles.
Okay.
Great.
All right. That's good.
You have enough sparkles yet?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All that. Now, what I'd like you to do is allow, as you stand here and the future is here, allow the past to sort of swing around, float around, or whatever it does when it moves this way.
Okay.
Okay. Notice it changed angles, didn't it? Just automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah. What angle do you see it at?
It's right. It's sort of here. It's a little lower than this one. But it's definitely higher than it was back there.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, looking at her, that looks pretty congruent. But we're going to find out if there's anything else. Does that? So, how does that feel to you? Does that feel like it fits?
It's just different.
Yes, indeed.
It's like, okay.
Explore that a little more. Taking the time.
Can I switch back and forth?
Yes.
It would feel good if I could go like
this.
And
that's good for our
like this.
unconscious to get that down.
Okay.
Not just both positions, but the back and forth. To give our unconscious that sense of security that
I kind of want to turn
always
this way.
Move. Okay, and the alternative is that you can let yourself face forward and let your timeline go wherever it belongs as you're facing forward.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. Now if I bring it in a little closer here. I want this past sort of right about here.
Okay.
I want to not be looking at
distracted by it.
Yeah. Okay.
And what you might want, Jan, is to let it have the sense of continual flexibility, like you were talking about a little earlier. Your future you might want here as it is.
Yeah. Right.
And the past, there may be times when you want to kind of check on something.
Right, and I can bring it up.
Yes. And then other times when it's just not relevant.
I can just kind of let it float back there?
Yes.
Okay.
Wherever you want it. If you want it right here on the side, on the wings, or...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I can just sort of see that it's there.
Let it float.
Yeah,
float
I like this
back and forth.
I guess I need to have this a little further this way if I'm going to be facing forward. Why do I have to face forward? Can I face this way?
You can. You can. Does it feel more correct to face
it just
sideways?
feels to just face a little bit this way. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm more focused for the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what I'd like you to do now, Jan, is let yourself, with this new timeline, right there, with the sparkles in the future.
Yes.
Yes, and the right amount of brightness and so on that you want. Let yourself move into the future through the rest of today, having the sense of going to sleep at night with this possibility there, and waking up in the morning with this available to you. Moving through the day, and having a sense of what is it like with this available, And as you do this kind of future pacing, you're doing a number of things. You're going for making it accessible in all contexts in life, so that when you want it, it can be automatically there. You're also checking for noticing when will it do wonderful things for me, and are there any situations where it's not so great? You're checking for both of those.
I kind of like this. It's a really different feeling.
Yes, yeah.
It's, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say more about how it feels different to you? What feels different? I mean, we see a definite physiology shift. There's an aliveness that's come.
Everything is a little bit brighter, including the past and the future. I don't know how to put a word to this, but this felt like this, and this feels softer. Okay. It feels somehow more gentle.
Okay. It looks that way too. There's a graciousness and a softness to her movements. Oh, that's very nice. Okay. So you can allow yourself and your unconscious at all levels to experiment with this more in the future. Knowing that your unconscious can automatically make certain improvements as that becomes appropriate and desirable. And also that at the unconscious level you can have choice. And if there are any contexts where that old arrangement would be still more appropriate, you can still have access to that. Okay. Now, the way I'm choosing my words depends on how strongly she favors which arrangement. It's real different than what I did with Eric. Here I'm going for having this one, and the old arrangement, it's if it would be. So I'm stating it in a language where I'm not really bringing it back. Yeah.
Connie, how would you extend out her future now? Because it was only within a 5-year
context. Good question. Let's check and find out what it naturally is right now.
Okay, it's close in here, and it kind of moves on out. It's kind of out by that wallpaper out there.
Okay, so it's really moved way out. And how many years out there do you see it going already?
I don't see it in years. It seems
just goes out.
It seems to go. Yeah.
It just goes. So there's not an end. Whereas before there was that. Yeah, yeah. Good question. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
But I want the microphone.
Oh.
And then. Thank you. Thank you. Does this give you enough examples of what direction to go that you have a sense of what to play with? If the timeline's not connected, connect it. One woman who was at a timeline workshop from about 3 years ago, or maybe it was 4, she had her future started about here, and it wasn't connected to her body. I had her just fill in the gap, and for some reason or other, she had never been reaching her goals or even moving towards them, you know? It was just they were always off there. And talked to her a couple years later. She said right after that, she started just really moving forward in her life. But sometimes there is no sorting. And there's somebody here who was talking about, okay, my past is in this, it's like there's this big photo album of pictures that it just was dumped and they're all right in this spot, but they're not sorted. And he's saying, every year I have to write down what happened so I can remember, you know, because otherwise it's not, there's no sort. So with that kind of thing, what you can do is, what I have done so far, and it's always worked so far, is to just say, okay, allow your unconscious to let that become sorted now in the way that it really is. I just presuppose that there's some part inside that you were there the whole time. Some part of you does know what order those things happened in, and they always sort themselves out. Now, another person raised a question about the future. What do you do if the future doesn't go out beyond a year? Generally, we want more than that, right? Don't want life to end right at that point, want a little more. Now, in this case, he's saying, okay, my future dropped off when I got laid off from my job. And that's what my future had been attached to. So what we can do in that kind of situation is find a future that's not anchored to anything that can be taken away. Another way to do the future is in branches. So if you do branches for the future, That are many pathways. That indicates that if any one choice is blocked off, there's still many more. And the way some people do that is they have lots of branches filled in so they can see certain content, and then they have lots of blank ones. It's like anything could go there. Just to give the unconscious the message that there's multiple possibility. Yeah.
What about having a picture out there that's more vague, so to speak, with sort of pop-up choices that you can go filter through?
Here's another way.
And see which one you
a
like.
vague picture and lots of pop-up choices. So there are as many ways as there are us. It's a matter of thinking, what are our outcomes here, and how can we give that form and structure? Okay, let's go play. You've got your instructions on the back of the sheets that you have. I think it's pretty clear. Do it, frame it as exploration. And the final thing that I want you to be sure to do is if you play and the person doesn't come up with the choice they want to keep, be sure you invite them to re-adopt their old one and leave with that. Have fun. This timeline work made a number of significant changes for Jan. Smoothing out her roller coaster timeline made her day-to-day experience more even and steady, with fewer up and down moods. This makes sense and is an example of the straightforward results you get from most timeline change work. Reversing a timeline left to right, as I also did with Jan, usually means a more massive internal reorganization than any other kind of structural timeline work. This can open the door to more positive results and also has more ecological implications. This can mean that follow-up work is important. Switching Jan's future from left to right opened up her right side, which had been shut down, and made her future more real. While this was a very positive experience, it clearly gave her access to more of her being. It also opened up other issues. Jan began to realize she didn't feel a permission to have a future. Once this was also dealt with, Jan could experience the full benefits. For more information about Jan's experience, you can read the follow-up information sheet that comes with this videotape. For many additional pointers and examples of how to use timeline change work, you can read Heart of the Mind, Chapter 19. We consider it very important that anyone doing structural timeline change work have thorough background and training, as is included in ours and some other master practitioner trainings.